Hi, and welcome to Ward Talk, CTN's look in the political scene in Ann Arbor. I'm your host, Bonnie Gabowitz. We'll be discussing issues and solutions with the City Council members from our 5 wards on the 3rd Wednesday of each month. Joining us is Ann Bannister from Ward 1. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Bonnie.
And Ann, it's such a pleasure to have you on this show because this is the first time that you are on Ward Talk. You are a relatively new council member.
Yes, I am.
So I'd love to start with finding a little bit about you, and I understand you are a longtime resident.
Yes.
So tell us about yourself.
Yes. Well, I've been on council just 6 months now, and it's been very exciting and very fun and even more than I had anticipated. And I want to thank CTN and you and the Ward 1 people who voted for me for bringing me to City Council. I'm deeply honored to be able to amplify the voices of my residents and help work on the critical issues facing the city.
And what brought you to want to run for council and be a part of this very important group?
Well, neighbors asked me to run about 1 year ago, just in April of 2017, because when the City Council at the time sold the public land next to the downtown library.
Which is called the library lot.
Correct.
That we refer to, right?
Yes. When the fact that it was selling public land without the public voting on it, that caused a lot of local activists to look around the city for new people to be on council. And they asked a lot of people, and I had a background as a local activist, and I accepted. And
so you came in with a real passion for a particular concern in terms of what was happening with some decisions, and that got you started.
Yes, I am very passionate about representing the voices of the residents in my Ward 1 and around the city, because there's a lot at stake.
Okay, so let's talk about Ward 1 then, in particular, what Ward 1 is dealing with, what concerns they have, what new programs you're working on, what's going on.
Yes. Well, I want to remind Ward 1 and people all across the city that if they have a question about anything going on at local government, to email City Council at citycouncil.a2gov.org. And one of the things was my first baptism by fire on my first day on council 6 months ago was of the vote on the Broadway development, 1140 Broadway. And that was a real eye-opener for me. I'm sort of like Frank Columbo, you know, where it was an eye-opener because we had what I call a faux postponement that evening. And a lot of over 500 Ward 1 residents had signed a letter to council opposing not development at this Broadway lot, but the size and density and lack of parking and what was going on November 20 through December 4 was a rezoning from a PUD, which would have had more community benefits in it, to a C1AR zoning, which is a by right development project where the developer has all the power. So
So this would have not given the citizens in your neighborhood a chance to really have a voice.
Yes.
Because of the zoning change.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the whole process of the zoning change was an eye-opener for me as a brand new council person, because on my first night we had a supermajority required, which meant there had to be 8 votes, and so we were preparing with my vote to decline this project. But the developer, Morningside, got an understanding of where we were headed that Monday afternoon So at the 11th hour, they requested a postponement. And I call it a faux postponement because if you rewatch those CTN videos from November 20, you'll see that there was an intention by granting the postponement that the developer would work with the 500 plus people in the community to hammer out more community benefits. And so the 2 weeks passed, we came up on December 4, and none of those compromises or negotiations had taken place, and all that had taken place was that the developer had eliminated enough, one of the people who had signed opposing the project, which meant that the supermajority now was no longer required, and the rezoning from a PUD to a by right property passed with 7 votes.
So that must have been frustrating for you.
Yes, and that's one of my key recurring themes, is as a minority on council, we're frequently on important issues voting 4 votes against 7 votes.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you want the citizens to be informed in as much as they can, in any way they can, so that they can have a voice, and their voice can be heard, and it can make a difference with the decisions of the council.
And that is what I'm working on. I've got a 3-year term, and I'm 6 months into it, and I am very much, in keeping with my background in personal finance education, working to help boil down these complex issues at city government down to plain language where the voter can understand and help guide us on council.
So when you say that it's important for the citizens to get in touch with the city, the council members, you're talking about, number one, asking questions to get informed, and number 2, giving input as to what their opinions are and why it's important that their opinion be heard.
Very much so. Council members can't be an expert in all of the city, local government issues, from roads to trees to water rates to the details of any particular development project. It's a lot for any one person to do. You know, council's a part-time, supposed to be a part-time job. You know, we get paid $16,000. You know, we have other things. So, yes, it is critical. I have advisory people all over the city, and I'm very open to listening and learning from everyone's opinions, because that's how we get better decisions made.
Well, let's hope that this segment gets some people excited about this and start connecting with the council members. Is there anything else going on with Ward 1 that you wanted to highlight at this point?
Well, I think it's interesting that I was elected in the election that I was in last year. Less than 10% of the people came out to vote. So what's going on in Ward 1, and that happened all around the city, is that I hope folks will participate more and come out to vote. Other things specific to the ward are sort of citywide issues too. We have development happening all over the city. We have the civilian police oversight task force taking shape.
Let's just talk about that for a moment, because you know, we know it was developing over time. Has the group actually been finalized as to who's on this committee?
Yes, it was, again, a complicated process, so the average resident couldn't possibly know. Right now, the task force is meeting. They're the group that was formed to write up the recommended bylaws and procedures for the Civilian Oversight Board. And so the task force is meeting tonight, you know, as a matter of fact. And then they will present their proposal to City Council for approval. But this was an interesting case again, where the public must stay vigilant or else they aren't going to get what they were hoping for.
And you need to hear from the neighbors as to what's important to them in terms of how the city can improve in police relations and how they go about their business. And
Yes.
I have mentioned in previous shows that the perception of how the police community is working with the citizens is extremely important, not just
Yes.
what is, but
Yes.
what people think it is.
Yes.
And so their input, again, would be very important.
Yes.
You know, for instance, you know, there's something that I hear comments about is, well, gee, there aren't that many police in downtown, right in Carytown, for instance. You know, you walk around, you don't see police standing there, but, you know, at what degree does the city decide that there needs to be more coverage in public areas?
Yes.
That's something that might need to be looked at, or, you know, what does the committee do to make sure that certain neighborhoods are covered based on their needs?
Yes.
Is that something that that would be looked at?
Yes, I think that's all part of the purposes of the Civilian Oversight Board. I think Ann Arbor Police have, by and large, a very good reputation. But I think Ann Arbor likes to be a model city as best we can, and so
well, we've been voted in the top rankings in so many different areas. I'm not
Yes.
surprised.
right. We like that, and this is another area where we are putting together some things that hopefully guidelines and looking at the behavior of the police, and we'll have to hammer out, you know, how much more or less police, but community policing is something we hear a lot about.
And in the minute we have left before the break, what is the time frame of when all of this will be finalized and in action?
I believe the task force needs to have their recommendations in by like mid-July, and then the administrator, Howard Lazarus, will be reviewing those. He's actually holding back on hiring our next police chief. We have Chief Robert Faunus is our interim chief right now, and so whether who will be the next chief of police depends on how this Civilian Oversight Board takes shape. But I wanted to emphasize that the public has to stay vigilant, because if we aren't vigilant, there were controversial issues to even setting up the task force that people had to speak up and stand out, and I want to thank Transforming Justice Washtenaw and Lori Saginaw and Julie Kiraz and Vivian Chang and Shirley Beckley and all of the community leaders in this area that have led the charge that's brought us on the path.
Well, when we come back from the show, we'll talk a little bit more about how citizens could be vigilant and more communicative and make Ann Arbor the great city that it is.
Wonderful.
Okay, great. We want to hear from you, so please email questions to ctn@a2gov.org or tweet us at #CTNInArbor. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be coming back with more from Ward 1.
In Ann Arbor, we stop for pedestrians at crosswalks. Period. It's the law.
Well, you should do laundry every day. You should do it. I don't want to smell that.
That's way too much. Every day? How much laundry do you think I go through in
Well,
a
at least
single
wear
day?
clean
You
clothes.
usually do laundry every day.
I got plenty of clothes to wear, new outfits
everywhere.
daily.
Well, I'm sick of
I'm
smelling
not
you,
a
dude.
sweater.
You
I'm
stink,
not a
dude.
sweater.
I shouldn't
Just wash
smell
your
you
clothes,
at all.
man.
There's so many smells.
Seriously.
Then check and mate.
Every June, the City of Ann Arbor's Mayor's Office hosts the annual Mayor's Green Fair to celebrate our community's environmental leadership as exhibited by citizens, nonprofits, businesses, and government.
Because it's great. There's music, there's good food, and there's a lot of great information.
Located in Ann Arbor's downtown, the Green Fair is open to the public and will feature displays of environmental information, green products, live music, and general enjoyment of the downtown environment. Exhibits will provide information and host hands-on activities for all ages.
And it's really important because the river is only as healthy as the lands that drains it.
Exhibitors will show off innovative energy-saving designs and actions, including displays of alternative fuel vehicles, green building materials, solar energy installations, renewable energy installations, and more. For more information, visit a2gov.org/greenfair.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz. This is Ward Talk. I'm speaking with Ann Bannister from Ward 1. We're back in, and we have so much to talk about. So let's just continue talking about what's really going on with your efforts in making a difference, not only for your ward, Ward 1, but also for the city, because you identify yourself as a minority council member. So could you enlighten us a little bit on, really what you're trying to do and what the struggles are for you to get things done, because it sounds like you're working very, very hard.
Yes. Well, I think that Ann Arbor wants development and we want density, but we're finding, the voters looking around and finding there's hidden costs. There's the traffic and the traffic congestion and the potholes and the basic services that government is supposed to be providing that aren't happening quite as quickly as people would like. Those, we're looking around and seeing all that and the hidden costs of development. And so I think we need to think about that in light of what our priorities are and whether our local elected officials are doing the budget to citizen priorities or to other projects.
And I would say this isn't something that just happened, that this has been ongoing, but it seems to have gained more intensity, let's say in the past 5 years.
Yes, since we've come out of the Great Recession, and so now building is back up. And I think there's sort of maybe the difference, one of the key differences between the mayor's party and the neighborhood council members is the level of enthusiasm for the developer. Whereas I think the mayor's party is approving things like we saw at the Broadway for development, everything the developer would want, giving them a by right control over that property when it used to be a PUD. And whereas the neighborhood party would like to see more responsible development where the impacts on traffic and idling in congested traffic jams and safety for children and bikers and walkers, safety for the public, to get around all this traffic.
And I'd just like to add too, I see there's more concern now that a lot of the businesses are having difficulty hiring people to come in and work in the city because of the affordability concerns, where if they can't live in Ann Arbor or near Ann Arbor, how can they work in Ann Arbor? So I know that's also become a concern.
Yes, we need that, and we are working on that, and people can re-look at Jennifer Hall and Teresa Gelati just did a working session this last Monday all about our options for affordability. So that's a really good one to re-look or meet with your council members and hear a summary from them about the different ways affordability is a huge problem.
So from your point of view, do you think they're just going too slowly, or is it that they're not making the right decisions?
it's interesting. They haven't taken much action on it over the years, and so that is something that I would like to work on more so going forward. I also want to talk about the issue of the Y lot, and that one, affordability.
That was
got
a
mixed
very
in.
controversial
Yes.
event, and is it totally settled now? Where there's a
No.
$10 million sale, and so what's happening with that?
No, it's been very confusing. We're in litigation with the developer, Dennis Dahlman. He has sued the city, and we are presumably going to court. Our attorney's office and our city administrator have been trying to negotiate a settlement. That was part of all those closed sessions during April. We had 5 closed sessions where council got in behind the door there and tried to hammer out solutions. And there's a reason why 8 votes are required when you're going to take over $4 million plus.
And there was quite a backlash, from what I understand. A lot of
Yes.
people were not happy with that decision.
Right, and that was very disheartening as a new council member, because our attorney's office had very clearly told us that with these closed sessions and the negotiations are privileged information to council members and confidential, not to be giving interviews and whatnot. And so it was very disheartening when we'd come out of those closed sessions and Mayor Taylor and his other folks on council, and then all of their fans, had a field day on social media. And that was disheartening, because I think when you really look at the facts in hindsight, it's important on big decisions like taking $4 or $5 million out of our general fund. And when we're in a lawsuit like that, we need to negotiate and look at our options and find what is the quickest and best path for the city out of this litigation.
So at this point, what can the citizens of Ann Arbor be doing, since you're involved in closed-door meetings? What can the citizens be doing about this now? Are they just sitting and waiting to see the next step?
That's a good question. What particularly the citizen, I love citizen participation, and what can they do at this point? I guess they can try to get up to speed on what has been happening, and
to stay informed.
To try and stay informed, but that's very difficult. That's where programs like this are useful, because we do have a lack of unbiased information in town. Ryan Stanton does a great job, with the MLive, but he's just one voice and such. And so, like when he wrote the article about folks accepting contributions from Dennis Dahlman, we're waiting for part 2 about where other campaign finance report analysis, and he has done some of that over the years, but it's hard for even him to keep up with all of the demand for unbiased, truthful information for the public.
So getting back to where we're at with the library law and the
Yes.
fact that you're in the negotiations with the developer,
Yes.
Are you saying that the sale is questionable, or how the property is going to be used is questionable?
Yes, both.
Both.
We sold the property to Dennis Dahlman years ago in, I believe it was 2014.
And he had some kind of deadline to get it developed. I know that's what the discussion was about.
Yes, he had a 4-year deadline. But if voters have time to read his complaint against the city, you'll see that there's a lot of mistakes on both sides. One of the major mistakes is that the city said you must connect to the underground parking at the library. Make an underground parking at the Y lot that would connect with the underground parking. Well, there is no stub connector that we told.
So you're saying it's just physically not possible to do that?
We need another $3 million from somewhere to give Mr. Dahlman the connector for him to connect to. So you know, we can get angry. I didn't think it was good that we got angry with him about what we did not have and what we had said we had, which was this.
And what do you hope will result in the end when all the dust settles? What do you hope will result?
Well, yet I want to work with the citizens and hammer out what we want. We've passed a resolution of intent to put workforce housing there. But I was a little disappointed that the workforce housing is still pretty wealthy people.
It's still high-end housing.
Sort of, yes, at 110% of area media income, which is getting into all the complicated acronyms. I appreciated my colleague, Councilmember Jack Eaton, had proposed 90%, which would have really brought it much more down into some of the food service workers, entry-level people, the people who are really pressured to pay for their housing and their transportation, you know, and so helping keep Ann Arbor's diversity of income levels and age groups and all alive.
Well, Ann, this has been so informative, and I'm so glad that we had a chance to find out a little bit about yourself.
Yes.
And where your passion is and what you're trying to do. Again, I just want to repeat that you are really encouraging the citizens
Yes.
to learn what they can and to speak up and, you know,
Yes.
give their opinion, because that makes your job easier when you're
Yes.
connected.
And if they want more people like me, they need to.
And
we
you
can
want
do
them
it.
to vote.
I want them to vote on August 7 and consider new leadership, and that we could get more done.
Okay, well, to be continued.
Yes.
Please remember to join us for a new episode every third Wednesday of the month. We'd like to hear from you, so please email us at ctn@a2gov.org. Attention, Ward Talk. You can also follow CTN and ask questions on Twitter at twitter.com/CTN in Arbor. We'll make sure to include your questions. For Ward Talk, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz. Until next month.